Hello everybody, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today is going to be an experimental painting. I have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua in front of me. It is 140-pound cold press. I'm saturating it with water, and it is 100% cotton. Today's experiment kind of hit me last minute. It's going to be a two-colored painting, fast and loose, with the wiping and the swiping, using the paper towel for texture, etc. It's going to be Cerulean blue. This is the Cotman brand. Looking at the pigment information, it's just PB15. And this is light red oxide, which should be PR101. I think that's what, yep, PR101. So it's a synthetic rust. So we're going to experiment with these two. They're kind of, well, definitely the light red oxide is definitely opaque. So I think it'll be a fun, interesting experiment. See what mixture takes place. Yeah, so I hope you'll enjoy. I'm gonna grab, let's start things off with PB15, the Cerulean blue. Grab some pure light red oxide. Give you a chance to kind of see those two colors together, wet and wet. Then from here, we'll start mixing them, kind of making up a little compositional scene. Go more on the blue side of this mix. The light red oxide is definitely overpowering. So now we'll just play around with linear perspective and aerial perspective, building up the intensity of the pigment load as we move our way forward. And we'll see what works well for what. This is just making up foliage. And I'm not getting an intense dark or anything from this mixture yet. I don't know if that's possible with these two. The Cerulean blue has kind of like a fresh crispness to it, I guess, while the light red oxide has that harsh red, kind of reminiscent of burnt sienna. So a part of me was wondering if I was going to get an ultramarine burnt sienna type mix from these two. Just to start demonstrating this technique, because I haven't done this one in a while, I can use the paper towel to soften and texturize, to lighten things back up. And if I don't like that, I can go back in and add texture over it. It is a very quick way of getting the illusion of depth and the illusion of detail, going back and forth, softening and darkening. Looks like I'm going to allow this to be a pool of water. This is more pure light red oxide. Now, just to talk about pigments a little bit, I usually use light red oxide in a painting mixed with ultramarine for a distant purple. That kind of, I started using that for that light distant purple after reading the works of James Fletcher Watson. We too kind of get a little bit of a muddy purple right here with these two. But it's definitely different than mixing light red oxide with ultramarine. And then I also, ooh, you'll hear that thunder in the background. I also use light red oxide mixed with the raw sienna. That kind of gives you a terracotta building type color. And what else do I use light red oxide for usually? I'd say those are the two main uses for like a terracotta building or a or if I'm doing distant mountains with ultramarine. And I'm sure I have used it with the phthalo blue. So a phthalo blue with the earth tones kind of gives a different set than ultramarine with the earth tones. So I use that there. And I think I'm gonna have to look through. I think I only have this one small tube. I may have to place an order again soon. But yeah, so that's usually where that one gets used for me. And then cerulean blue. I know most of us all have cerulean blue on our palettes. To relate this back to fast and loose, if you're a fan of Ron Ranson, I'm just going to scrape in some tree trunks and kind of build up a texture here while I talk. Ron Ranson, fast and loose painter, had a very limited palette, and limited palettes help take the guesswork out of what colors to use, and for beginners and for experienced painters, it just makes it more of a painting process than sitting there mixing and looking for the colors. And also limited palettes will add to an overall harmony within a painting. But so cerulean blue wasn't on Ron Ranson's original palette. However, in his book on Skies, I think it's Ron Ranson on Skies, he incorporated cerulean blue, I believe, for paintings that were more focused on that. I think a lot of the cheaper cerulean blue is synthetic. This one, PB15, I'm pretty sure that's phthalo blue. I do not have a tube of phthalo blue around me to check. And some brands mix it with white, so look at your pigment information, because that could have an influence on the wiping back and forth and a potential chalkiness of it. I think there is a natural or a pure, I don't know if it's natural or what, but an actual cerulean blue pigment. I came across that in the oil painting from the Williamsburg line, I believe, but I don't own that pigment. I'm not sure why I didn't get that pigment. But ultimately, most people have cerulean blue, and I think, I don't know if I had mentioned how I use it. I'll use it once in a while for the sole purpose of maybe just getting a little bit of pop in the sky or the water. I've never really had other uses for it. Now, I do need to add, having little recipes is helpful, but it could get you stagnant within your paintings. So it is good to experiment. So I know it's contradictory to say have a limited color of paints and then go ahead and say have different paints and experiment with it to keep things fresh. That's Harrison climbing up on my easel. He's off of it now. So far with this color combination, I feel that I'm having to revert back to texture in order to get a variety within it. Kind of using white and texture to add another element. The last application was more pure from the tube, so I'll do another one of that. So this is pure cerulean, a little bit of light red oxide. Kind of a half and half on this. Now forgive me if I get the trees wrong, the name of trees, but it does seem the pure cerulean with a little bit of light red oxide gives that kind of the bluish green that you'll get for, is it like a Douglas fir? Is it some coniferous trees? So that grayish blue, bluish green, that might be a potential application of those two. If you know the name of the tree that I'm talking about, comment down below. Oh, by the way, at this point, of course, please consider liking and subscribing and supporting this channel. Just by liking and subscribing helps the channel out a lot. If you ever have any questions, comments, concerns, make them down below. Please be polite. I do have a Patreon account if you ever want to support this channel. 2 very super simple tiers. And I do have some exclusive content for patrons. That being said, if you don't want to or can't or don't feel like it, I completely understand. And that's the end of my spiel. Okay. So on top of all that, of course, you're always welcome to follow along with these tutorials. Somebody recently commented that's the first time they ever heard somebody say you could follow along and sell one of the works that you follow along. That being said, you guys are more than welcome to follow these, and if somebody wants to buy it from you, you have my permission to sell anything that you've done following a tutorial. I want you guys to be successful. Art supplies get expensive, hence the spiel about Patreon. But I want you guys, like, at the end of the day to, first of all, have the drive to paint, and you have that support network start to build up for y'all. I haven't really used the paper towel for texture in this one. I started relying back on the scraping method. So let's see a little bit more paper towel lifting. At this point, I am feeling that a tertiary color, I guess that would be the term, would be beneficial, something to push things on the darker side. Payne's Gray would be a good, easy, cheap route. But I don't think I want to do that. Of course, black would be good. Let me pause first. All right, I'm back. Our kitten Percy was making a noise. Her claw was caught in her collar, and poor baby. So I just fixed that for her. It's one of those quick release collars, but she had it caught on the I think the flower on it. I'll remove that collar after this and we'll figure out what's up. But she's in here with me now. So anyway, so I think, yeah, before I had paused it, we're still wet and wet. I'm going to bring a little bit of this out into this blue sky, get a little bit more texture out here. Try to build up areas of different density. Yeah, so I was speculating on a third color that would potentially work with these. Something to go darker. I'd have to either, like I said, rely on just something that'd be purely dark, like a Payne's gray or a black or something like that, or maybe search for a color mixed with the light red oxide to get that darkness. Some potential options, I think I mentioned it earlier, would have been a phthalo blue. That might work, but I don't know if I want to leave this one kind of pure between the two mixes. And as you can see, I'm relying on the layering of the textures of the scraping of branches here in order to achieve depth. What may work now is to do a dry off and use more pure pigments and see how that painting on the dry brush will affect this. So I'm going to pause it, we're going to do a dry off, and we'll talk about that next scene. All right, so I think that dry off really did it for me and kind of sold me a little bit more on these colors. Looking at it through the camera and standing up back while I was drying it. They're really two beautiful colors being used together. They don't pack a super big punch mixed together. Right now it's just, I'm taking the rigger and I'm experimenting with mixing those two. We get, I know I've been kind of struggling to describe this color, but maybe we could say it's kind of like a slate gray. Percy, what are you playing with down there? So this is on the dry painting. So we'll get things a little bit more crisper. Have a little bit of things, foliage closer to us. Tonally a little bit more darker. But it is a beautiful combination of colors. This method in general of the two colors, wet and wet, and pushing them around, scraping them, lifting them, has proven to be, something that does use a lot of pigment. So if you were following along, I'd recommend using the more student grain pigments like the Cotman or the Van Gogh, or Da Vinci is professional line, but the prices are good enough to use in heavy applications like this. So check them out. This is just heavy application here. Oh, now would be another good time for me to say, hey, are there any two color combinations that you know of or would like me to try? Mention them down below. So now I'm just adding little textural techniques. Color-wise, I think we've reached the extent of what we can really achieve, or for my skill level, what I can achieve. Since we're talking about color mixing, one person who is amazing at color mixing has an entire website dedicated to it. And I think she teaches classes and is currently writing a book, or maybe does have a book out, not quite sure. Jane Blundell, Bluddell, I believe. Even if you misspell it, it should come up in Google searches. She's very prominent and has amazing website. When I started watercoloring, I don't know, let's say 2 years ago, I referenced her page a lot when I was looking into how I wanted to build up my palette. She compares pigments from different brands. She has a beautiful system of mixing and displaying and working towards the center with different percentages. It's a very good informational source. So artists that put out information like that for free, it's just phenomenal. Because, you know, a lot of the times, especially with oil painting and other things, you know, you hear that they had, I might have mentioned this in another video, you hear that they had the apprentices and all that, but what did they teach the apprentice? You know, nothing really seemed to have been passed down, or if it was passed down, it was super secret. Which makes sense, because it was somebody's livelihood. You know, that was how they, you know, stood out from the crowd and, you know, put food in their mouths. But unfortunately, just an adverse side effect of that was that a lot of techniques and things are lost to history. So, you know, it's just something to consider. The slate color that takes place is really neutral and interesting. I feel like just compositionally we need to darken up the sides. What I'm going to do now is pause the film. I'm going to dry it off and sign it, and then I'm going to turn it back on so you guys can see what it looks like dried and in a matte. Okay, put that there. I'll be right back. All right, and here we go. Here's the finished product, dried and underneath the mat. Right in here, you see just that showcasing of that beautiful cerulean blue, and that's the way, if I was to use it in a palette, that's where it would usually pop up, here or just somewhere in the sky. The light red oxide is when we were just kind of splashing it in, just to kind of showcase those two colors together and see what they look like. And then everything else is just a mixture of those two. I think that's all there is to say. I hope you enjoyed. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day. Bye.